My family gave my golden child brother $541,000 while I got $0. Then they tried to rob my $25M company, claiming I was ungrateful. When the bank caught them, they actually sued me. At court, Dad preached about family sacrifice, until my lawyer opened one secret binder and his face turned pale. My name is Marcus. I'm 38 years old, and I built my company from nothing. No investors, no loans, no family money. Just 12 years of work that started in a rented room with a second-hand laptop and ended somewhere around $25 million. But before any of that, I was just the other son. My brother Daniel is 3 years older than me. Growing up, I watched my parents build a life around him, not out of cruelty exactly, but out of habit. He got the car at 16. I got a bus pass. He got his college rent covered. I worked 2 jobs and applied for every scholarship I could find. When his credit card debt hit $15,000 the first time, my parents paid it without discussion. When it happened again and again, same result. By the time I started counting, they had cleared his debt 3 separate times. I added it up once. $127,000 in rent over 8 years, $34,000 in car payments, $52,000 in credit card debt, wiped clean across 3 rounds. I kept a spreadsheet the way other people keep a diary. I never planned to use it. I just needed to know I wasn't making it up. The day I signed my first major contract, $500,000, the deal that told me the company was real, I called my father. I was sitting in my car in a parking lot, and I wanted to share it with someone who mattered. He picked up. I told him. There was a short pause, and then he said, "That's nice. Your brother just got a promotion." That promotion lasted about 2 months. The company he now dismisses is worth $25 million. I stopped calling them with good news after a while. There was no point. The one time I tried to bridge the gap, I booked my parents an anniversary trip. $8,000. I researched it, paid for it, didn't mention the cost. I didn't need credit. I just wanted to do something that felt like family. My Aunt Margaret told me weeks later what my mother had said to her privately. "Marcus can afford it. It's the least he can do." I never forgot that line. And I never forgot that Margaret was the only person in that family who called me afterward and said, without anything attached to it, "I'm proud of you, Marcus." She was the only one who ever said that. I didn't know then how much I'd need to hear it again this time. From a notary public, Christmas dinner was at my parents' house that December. Roast on the table, candles, the whole thing, normal, or close enough to normal that I didn't see it coming. We were halfway through the meal when my father set down his fork and cleared his throat. He started talking about family, about how success means more when it's shared, about how Daniel had been thinking about his career direction and how a company like mine could use someone with Daniel's people skills. He said it the way you announce something that's already been decided, calm, reasonable, like he was reading from a script they'd all rehearsed without me. I looked at Daniel. He was leaning back in his chair, relaxed, not even slightly surprised. I asked Daniel, as evenly as I could, what he thought he'd contribute. There was a pause. Then Daniel said, "You wouldn't have had the confidence to start that company if we hadn't raised you." He said it so easily, like it was a fact. Like the $25 million I had built, alone, over 12 years, already half belonged to all of them just by default. My mother nodded. My father picked up his fork again. I said I'd think about it. I didn't say anything else for the rest of the evening. I sat in my car in the driveway for 10 minutes before I left. I didn't call anyone. I drove home with the radio off, running the dinner back through my head, trying to decide whether what I just heard was ordinary family pressure or something more deliberate. I hadn't made up my mind yet. But on the way out, I noticed something parked along the street. A new SUV, black, clean, expensive looking. I didn't remember seeing it before. I filed it away and kept driving. 3 weeks later, Ryan called. Someone had attempted to access my business banking portal from a residential IP address. I knew which house before he finished the sentence. Ryan sent me the full security log that afternoon. I read through it twice at my desk, slowly. 2 unauthorized access attempts on my business banking portal, both originating from the same residential IP address. A wire transfer of $47,000 had been initiated at 2:14 p.m. and blocked by the bank's fraud detection system 4 minutes later. The IP address was registered to a home I had eaten Christmas dinner in 3 weeks prior. I cross-referenced it against my contacts to be sure, even though I already knew. Same router, same house. 11 years at that address. I didn't call my parents. I called my attorney, Elena. She told me to send her everything and not to contact the family until she'd reviewed it. I forwarded the log, the bank's fraud alert, and the IP registration records. Then I sat at my desk for a while and didn't do much of anything. 2 days later, Elena called me back. She had pulled the full forensic timeline and cross-referenced it with public dealership records. The attempted wire transfer of $47,000 had been initiated on a Thursday afternoon. That same Thursday, at approximately 4:30 p.m., a $47,000 cash deposit was made on a vehicle purchase at a dealership 14 miles from my parents' house. The deposit and the block transfer were the same amount, to the dollar. The dealership invoice was dated the same day. Elena laid both documents side by side on her desk during our call and described what she was looking at. Same date. Same amount. We have both records. She didn't editorialize. She didn't need to. The black SUV I'd noticed parked outside my parents' house on Christmas night had just become evidence. I still didn't call my parents. That was apparently interpreted as weakness. Within a week, my mother left 3 voicemails. She was crying in all of them, saying I was abandoning the family, that I'd changed, that money had made me cold. My father sent a text. "You've become ungrateful. We made you who you are." Then Daniel sent a message to the extended family group, aunts, uncles, cousins, 43 people in total, saying I was refusing to help my own family, that I had become too good for the people who raised me. The word selfish appeared twice. Not fair appeared 3 times. Within hours, people I hadn't spoken to in years were weighing in. I took a screenshot of the entire thread. I didn't reply to any of it. I sent the screenshot to Elena. Then, in March, a letter arrived by certified mail. It was from a law firm I didn't recognize. Their clients, my parents, were asserting that I owed them compensation for what the letter called emotional and financial investment during my developmental years. It also described the $47,000 wire transfer as a pre-agreed withdrawal from family shared funds. There was no such agreement. There had never been a conversation about shared funds. The $47,000 had been attempted without my knowledge, without my consent, and without a single phone call before or after. And now that attempted theft had been reframed in legal language as something I had already promised them. Elena read the letter, marked 3 paragraphs, and called me. "They put it in writing," she said. I let that sit for a moment. "That was the biggest mistake they ever made," I said. Elena had my legal defense. Now I needed to build the full picture. I opened my laptop one evening and started a document. What had lived in my head for years as a running tally numbers I'd tracked because I needed to know I wasn't imagining things. I now put into a formal spreadsheet. Every dollar my parents had directed toward Daniel over the past 12 years, itemized and sourced. $127,000 in rent across 8 years. $34,000 in car payments. $52,000 in credit card debt, cleared on 3 separate occasions. $18,000 in medical bills. And a mortgage guarantor obligation totaling $310,000, still active. The total came to $541,000. Over the same 12 years, my parents had provided me with $0 in direct financial support. Not because I hadn't needed it early on, because it was never offered. I sat at my desk looking at that number for a long time. Then I saved the document, sent a copy to Elena, and closed the laptop. I called Aunt Margaret on a Saturday afternoon. She picked up on the first ring, which told me something. I explained what had happened: the access attempts, the wire transfer, the letter from the law firm. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I've been waiting for someone to ask." We arranged for a formal recorded statement, made with her full knowledge and consent, witnessed by a notary. What Margaret provided wasn't dramatic. It was specific. She described the Christmas dinner when my college acceptance letter arrived and my mother announced it at the table, then changed the subject to Daniel's new girlfriend before anyone had finished reacting. She described the phone call after I'd booked my parents' anniversary trip, my mother telling her privately that I could afford it, that it was the least he could do. She had witnessed these things firsthand, over years, with no financial stake in how any of this turned out. Her statement ran to 4 pages. I read it once, thanked her, and told her I hoped it wouldn't come to much. She said she hoped so too, but she didn't sound convinced. I was still at the office the following Tuesday when Daniel walked in. He hadn't called ahead. He came in like he was stopping by for lunch, jacket on, easy smile, no urgency. He sat down across from my desk and told me the family just wanted what was fair, that they weren't asking for anything unreasonable, that blood was blood. Then he said, "You've got $25 million, Marcus. What does it cost you?" I felt something move through me that I hadn't expected. Not anger exactly, something older than that. Every dinner where my news got one sentence and his got the whole table. Every loan application I filled out alone. Every time the word ungrateful got used to describe me standing up for myself. It was all there, and for about 4 seconds I wanted to say exactly what I was thinking. I didn't. I looked at him and said, "I'll be in touch through my attorney." He left. I sat in my office alone for a while, not doing anything, just sitting. He walked out of there thinking he'd won that round. He hadn't. He just confirmed everything I already knew. My mother called on a Thursday evening in late March. I almost didn't pick up, but I did, and I'm glad I did because I had already set up call recording on my phone, fully compliant with the consent laws in my state. When her number appeared on the screen, I started the recording before I answered. She didn't cry this time. She sounded tired, flat, like someone who had rehearsed what she was going to say enough times that the emotion had worn off the words. She told me that unless I agreed to help the family before April 1st, they would contact media outlets. She said they would tell people I had built my company using family resources and was now refusing to acknowledge where I came from. She said people deserved to know the truth about who I really was. I didn't interrupt her. I let her finish. When she hung up, I sat in the quiet for a moment. Then I played the recording back from the beginning. I listened to the whole thing. Her voice sounded small coming through the phone speaker. She believed every word she was saying. I could hear that. She genuinely thought she was owed something, that this was fair, that they had been patient long enough. That didn't make it less of a threat. It just made it sadder. I called Elena. "Schedule the mediation," I said. The morning of the mediation, I packed one binder. Inside it, the bank's security log, the forensic IP analysis, the wire transfer record, the dealership invoice, the financial spreadsheet with 12 years of itemized figures, Aunt Margaret's notarized 4-page statement, the screenshot of the 43-person family group chat, and a full transcript of my mother's phone call, every document dated, every figure sourced, everything Elena had reviewed and verified over the preceding 3 months. I didn't go through it the night before. I already knew everything in it. I thought about my father at the dinner table adjusting his fork after Daniel's comment landed. I thought about my mother's voice on that recording, tired, certain, sure she was right. I thought about Daniel leaning back in that chair at Christmas, like the decision had already been made. I didn't have a speech prepared. I didn't need one. I walked into that room with one binder. My family walked in expecting an apology. What they were about to get was something very different. Elena's law firm occupied the 14th floor of a building downtown. The mediation room was neutral in the way those rooms always are: gray walls, a long conference table, a water pitcher nobody touched at first. A professional mediator sat at the head of the table, a man in his 60s who introduced himself once and said very little after that. Elena and I sat on one side, across from us. My father in the best suit I'd ever seen him wear, my mother with a notepad in front of her, Daniel with his arms loosely crossed, and their attorney beside him. The room felt formal in a way that Christmas dinner had not. There was no script here that had been rehearsed without me. Whatever happened in the next hour would be on the record. Daniel had driven himself. I'd seen the SUV in the parking structure on my way in. Same one. Their attorney opened by describing the situation in careful language. He said his clients believed there was a long-standing family financial arrangement that had not been honored. He said the relationship between Marcus and his family had been one of mutual investment, and that my recent success represented a shared outcome. He was measured, professional, and completely disconnected from the truth. I poured myself a glass of water and didn't say anything. Then he yielded the floor to my father. Robert spoke about sacrifice, about the years of raising 2 boys, the meals, the roof, the emotional foundation he believed he had provided. Carol talked about the things she had given up. Daniel mentioned that he had industry connections that could add value to the company, said it like it was a reasonable business proposal. They took turns building the version of events in which I owed them, something in which the $25 million sitting in my company's accounts was, in some meaningful sense, the product of their investment in me. I sat and listened to all of it. Every word. When they finished, Elena opened the binder. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't editorialize. She placed the bank's security log on the table and walked through it sentence by sentence. 2 unauthorized access attempts on my business banking portal on the 14th of January, both originating from a residential IP address. She placed the IP registration document beside the log's same address, same router, registered to my parents' property for 11 years. A wire transfer of $47,000 had been initiated at 2:14 inches the afternoon and blocked by the bank's fraud detection system 4 minutes later. She placed the wire transfer record on the table. Then she placed the dealership invoice beside it. On January 14th, at approximately 4:30 p.m., she said, a $47,000 cash deposit was made on a vehicle purchase at a dealership 14 miles from your client's home. She looked at their attorney. Same date. Same amount. We have both records. The room went quiet. Their attorney started to speak. Elena placed one more document on the table, the demand letter his firm had sent, with 3 paragraphs marked in yellow. The letter that had described the attempted $47,000 transfer as a pre-agreed withdrawal from family shared funds. Your clients put that characterization in writing, she said. We have the bank's records showing it was flagged as fraud. She let that sit for a moment. Then she said, there's more. Elena opened to the financial spreadsheet. 12 years of figures, every dollar my parents had directed toward Daniel itemized and sourced. Rent, car payments, 3 rounds of credit card debt, medical bills, a mortgage guarantor obligation, $541,000. She read selected line items aloud, slowly, so the numbers could land one at a time. The mediator asked my mother directly whether she could confirm or dispute the figures. My mother said she needed to consult her attorney. Daniel's attorney requested a short recess. Elena said, we have one more document. She read a single passage from Aunt Margaret's notarized, 4-page statement, the Christmas dinner when my college acceptance was announced at the table, and my mother changed the subject before anyone had finished. Reacting. Margaret had been present. Margaret had no financial interest in the outcome. Her statement had been made voluntarily, on the record, witnessed by a notary. The room was quiet again, but differently this time. Something crossed Daniel's face that I hadn't seen before. Not just discomfort, something older, recognition maybe, the particular expression of a person confronting a version of events they had convinced themselves wasn't real. The mediator looked at their attorney and said, quietly, I think you should review the settlement documents. The recess lasted 20 minutes. When both parties reconvened, Elena placed 3 documents on the table. The first was an acknowledgement that the banking access attempts had been unauthorized and constituted attempted fraud. The second was a full release of all financial claims against me. The third was a mutual non-disparagement agreement. In exchange, I would not pursue criminal proceedings. Their attorney reviewed each page. My father signed without speaking. My mother signed and then looked at me for a moment. I met her eyes. I didn't say anything. Daniel signed last, pushed the pen across the table, and didn't look up. I signed the reciprocal documents. Elena closed the binder. They signed. I didn't say a word. The receipts said everything that needed to be said. I walked out of Elena's building at 11:15 on an April morning. The air was cold in the way April sometimes surprises you, clear sky, no wind, colder than it looks. I found my car in the parking structure and sat in it for a few minutes without starting the engine. I wasn't processing a victory. I was processing the absence of something. 3 months of preparation, years of accumulated weight before that, and now it was over in the quietest possible way. 3 signatures on 3 documents, a binder closed, a room emptied. What I felt wasn't satisfaction. It was closer to the feeling you get when a sound you've stopped noticing finally goes away. And only then do you realize how long you'd been hearing it. I thought about my mother's face when she signed. The way she had looked at me afterward, just for a second. I thought about my father signing without speaking, not once looking up from the page. I thought about Daniel pushing the pen across the table like it was somebody else's problem now. I noticed I was hungry. I hadn't eaten since early that morning. The parking meter on the level below was probably expiring. Small things. Real things. I started the car and drove. That week, I made a few quiet changes. I removed my parents from the emergency contact records at the company. I updated my estate documents to reflect my actual intentions. Neither of those things took long. Neither of them felt good exactly, but they felt necessary, and necessary was enough for now. I called Aunt Margaret on a Friday morning. She picked up quickly, and I thanked her for the statement, for the years of noticing, for saying the things she'd said. She cried a little. I let her. I didn't rush past it or tell her it was fine. It wasn't entirely fine, and she knew that too. I sent her flowers the next day and a handwritten note. Nothing elaborate, just that I was grateful and that it had mattered. I didn't block my family's numbers. I just didn't answer. There's a difference, and I knew which one I needed. I went back to the office on Monday. I sat down at my desk, opened my email, and got to work. At some point during the afternoon, I opened my documents folder and found the spreadsheet, the one I'd kept for years in my head before I ever put it on paper. I looked at it for a moment. Then I closed the file. I didn't need it anymore. The company was still there. I was still there. That was enough. I still think about that Christmas dinner sometimes. The candles on the table. The smell of my mother's cooking. Daniel leaning back in his chair with that easy confidence of a man who had never once been told that what he wanted wasn't automatically available to him. My father clearing his throat before he spoke, like he was calling a meeting to order. All of it so ordinary on the surface. All of it so carefully arranged underneath. Here's what I've come to understand. The $25 million was never really the point. I didn't want money to define my relationship with my family. I wanted it not to matter, to be something separate from who we were to each other. What the money did instead was make visible what had always been there. The dynamic existed long before my company did. It existed when I was 19, working 2 jobs and filing scholarship applications while my brother's rent arrived on time every month. The money didn't create the problem. It just removed the last excuse for pretending the problem wasn't real. They called me ungrateful. They called me selfish. They said I owed them something for making me who I am. The bank records disagreed. The invoices disagreed. The timestamps and the IP addresses and 4 notarized pages from a woman with nothing to gain disagreed. I know what happened. They know what happened. The documents know what happened. That's enough. That's more than enough.